call the meeting to order at 4:01. We have for the committee right now, Bob Bastinto and Roy Gott, co-chairs, also Sandy Fortin and Mike Summerer. Have community member Paul McGrath. We have David Good from Mission Broadband. Addison Gruber, I think, is joining us from HCPC. And we have Kate Gore and Jason Crosby from Charter. And I'll try and keep an eye on the waiting room in case anybody else comes in.
Addison, what's HCPC? What is that?
So I'm just here to sit in on the meeting. HCPC is the Hancock County Planning Commission, and I'm an AmeriCorps member there.
Great, thank you. Sorry for not knowing. There's so many acronyms in this world, so.
Yeah. I'm going to say, I know we've got a bit of a time schedule, so let's jump in. I'm going to start a breakout room. So to be clear, I'm going to have the committee members and David and the two charter representatives in the breakout room, correct? And then when we finish up, we'll come back out of the breakout room and probably go right back in. And we just have Mark Perka joining us for the committee as well. So give me a second. So, David, Jason.
Hello,
Kate,
good afternoon.
Mark, Mike, Bob, and Sandy. All right, everybody's going to get an invitation who needs to move, and I'll see you in there. And Addison and Paul will be back out. We just have to have this sort of behind the veil of Zoom. Thank you. I just wanted to, since you folks are out here, I'm going to turn off the waiting room so people can just jump right in. And Paul, you were involved before. Could I impose upon you just to let people know what's going on, that we're meeting with Spectrum in a breakout room and then we'll be back out?
Be happy to do that. And
All
obviously
right.
you can hear my microphone's working now, so.
Much better. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
You're on mute there.
Everybody's going to come back in. I'm sorry about this. I messed.
No
It's my
problem.
first breakout room.
It's okay.
Hello.
Sorry about that, everybody. We're going to end up going back into the breakout room in just a second. That was my bad.
Just a 2-second video break.
Yeah. For some reason, there's a stupid 7-minute automatic close setting on breakout rooms. So I forgot to take that off. So I turned off the automatic close.
I don't know if you can hear me, Roy, but I was in the best speech ever when that happened.
I know. I apologize. So
Looks like they've all gone. We'll see you in a bit.
okay. Sarah, can you, just for my records, can you tell me what your last name is?
So Sarah is, she's with us, but she has come across an accident, and so she may be delayed. So she may chime in and chime out as we go through this, but her last name is Davis.
Oh,
Thanks,
good.
Simon.
You're welcome.
That's
Takes me a
an
minute to
even
hop
one.
on and off mute.
That's fine. That's a nice, easy name to spell. All right. So we've got the committee back here. What I'll do is I will create another breakout room with the consolidated people, and we'll jump in there and do it all over again. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Recreate. David, Mark, Mike, Bob, Sandy, Sarah, Simon. And thank you, Paul and Addison, for holding down the fort here. We'll be back again.
We'll see you when.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you for joining us. Okay. Well, yeah, everybody else is gone. I don't know, do we have anything else to really discuss at this point about what we just saw, David, or do we need to? You're muted, by the way.
I have notes that I can transcribe. Unfortunately, they might not be as comprehensive as I wanted them to be, but I do have a pretty good memory, so I will lay those down and get those out to you. As far as your committee, I don't know if you have any more business tonight.
We've just got a little bit here, but we'd be fine to discuss our opinions of what we heard, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then why don't we just roll with that while we have it fresh in our minds, what people's thoughts are about the two presentations we got tonight from the two respondents.
That sounds good.
It sounds like both could work. You never want to make these decisions based on the personalities of the presenters. It's the companies that we want to react with. I'm still disappointed personally that, based on my understanding of technology, that Spectrum is going to stick with copper for such a long time. But if they think that the new DOCSIS system is going to meet our needs, then I don't really care whether it travels on copper or with the speed of light down a piece of glass. So I really can't distinguish the two proposals based on what I heard.
I will say it was nice to hear that there was the inclusion of free service for certain municipal locations from Consolidated, which was something that Spectrum would have to look into. I mean, that seems like an easy ask, talking about the scope of this project.
I will say, and even though Mission Broadband has taken a vow of neutralness, I've been through a lot of these with both these companies. I do tend to find that Charter will provide the company line, if you will, right? Which is, I mean, Jason is a good presenter. He knows his stuff, but he can lose you in his explanation and his confidence, I guess. And so I would just, maybe caution that you continue to, ask the right questions and make sure you're getting the right answers. I do find that Simon and Sarah tend to be a little more open-vested with their answers. Not maybe so much tonight, but they are more open to, discussing different things like, I mean, they're not going to move their CO, but they're open to making sure that, they've recognized that it could be a problem. And after seeing that map, I'm going, wow, because that water came up really close to where.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's why I brought that map up, because I mean, it seems funny to me that, they wouldn't have really looked at where the CO was, because they had the question in advance.
Yeah, they did.
And that is not, there's no question of how close that is to the water.
Yeah.
So,
That's all I have.
Just one general observation I had was that, given thinking about our community and, definitely one stood out to me, possibly being one of the two providers probably being more affordable than the other. As far as individuals' homes, as far as individuals, paying their monthly fee, so to speak, it seemed as though one was more an affordable rate provider, if you will, than the other. And given our community, thinking about, the demographics and such, is that something that we need to consider as well? The reality of it all, right?
Yeah. Well, and they weren't all that different. I mean, Spectrum said what they have their $30 a month or $29.95 a month, the low cost package. And I don't know what rates, they didn't say what speed accompanied that, but Consolidated their 100 meg tier is 25 in the first year, 45 in the second year. So not terribly out of line with each other, I'd say.
Okay.
It's definitely a concern because we do have that aging population, that fixed income for seniors, and senior doesn't need necessarily a gig up and a gig down. If they've been getting by with 3 megs down and 768 up, 100 by 100 is going to be overkill. So
exactly.
I
Just a
think
thought.
Yeah, no, but it's absolutely worth a very important point. I don't really see, like you said there, Mike, there's not a lot of separation between the two in what we heard today. I really would have appreciated a more thorough response on the RFP though. It just does not feel like there was a lot of interest to put in the work. And even as was said at the end there, it's a high level concept response. I find it funny to think that in the time frame we had for this, that Spectrum could not put in the same amount of effort for a high level response as well.
It's not the first time they've done that. Which is encouraging because you had the wherewithal to write it and to put the thought into it and to want to know these answers, and you sort of get the stock, response. I mean, they're going to do a fine job if you select them. They will. I mean, they do take on sort of and Roy, you can probably relate to this, a Cisco attitude, right? Where they just feel like they're the only game in town. And
This is the way it is, take it or leave it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're speaking to a guy who worked for Time Warner for 20 years. And I don't say that lightly.
Well, as I said, that's the reason why I bounce between service providers once every 2 years, because I don't like the price creeping up and calling up and being told, well, if you don't like it, cancel the service.
Yeah. Or their promotional things that they do, which is another thing that drives me crazy.
Bob?
Oh, sure. I'm not impressed by either. I really not. I agree with David. I agree with you. They Spectrum knows this stuff. They do a good job, but the creepage is what bothers me. And although internet rates are fairly stable, there's not as much creepage with internet rates as opposed to, say, cable. And that needs to be really pounded home to folks that if we're not talking cable, we're talking pure internet. And having sold enterprise for Spectrum, that was for business. I mean, it's a whole different set of rules. And normally, what bothers me here is that there is a lack of redundancy for either solution. I mean, you may have some CO redundancy, but that's about it. We're all governed by the same telephone pole, regardless. The branch goes down, the pole goes down. We're all out of service. So, you know, my question for you, Roy, is that wasn't brought up at all any type of bond agreement with Spectrum. Am I missing something on that?
No, they don't have them.
Yeah, because
Oh,
they didn't even, their response was so, well, incomplete that it didn't describe funding models or anything that we really requested, so. Yeah. David, I'm just reaching back here because talking about price creep, somewhere I remember reading or hearing that the pricing levels for Consolidated, I think it was Consolidated, we were talking about price increases in the future. And I feel like we had a discussion where it was said there were no, it wasn't Consolidated. It was some of the, I think it was when we were talking Down East Broadband Utility and Pioneer, their service provider. That was who it was. They were not forecasting any increases in rates. It's something we didn't ask here, but
Oh, that, yeah, well, you're never gonna get a commitment like that out of those two.
no, I didn't figure we would.
no.
But it's something,
No.
it just came to my mind. I was like, where did we hear it? I knew we heard it somewhere.
Well, I would even I did not know that Down East would make that commitment, but I would question how they could, really. But
Yeah, in the discussion, so it's not so much Down East, it was Pioneer who was serving the customers directly over Down East network. And they, for example, were working to get improve their tiers basically, and everything up to a gig at least would be under $100. So they were working to restructure their tiers and not looking at, so any case, it's not the it's not the situation we're dealing with, so.
There is a third option. And Roy, then that's something that was considered. We can do a do-it-yourself option. I mean, does it make sense to consider that?
I would love to see us have our own network, but I really feel like if, for example, Down East Broadband looked at this and said, no, it's not worth touching, because they can't guarantee the take rate, especially with the RDOF situation with Consolidated, because Consolidated has to build that out one way or the other. They're obligated to.
Absolutely.
And that's a chunk of our service area. So if they can't justify the risk given that, then that to me seems like we'd be saddling a bigger risk than we would want to on our communities if we're doing it all ourselves.
Right.
yeah, and I would advise you to speak to other communities that have either done it or tried to do it, because the commitment is huge. And it falls to the community right? It's the 80-20 rule, right? You're gonna get 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. And it's burned people out that we've dealt with. I'm not advising against it. I'm not, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be agnostic, but it's not. It's an undertaking, and there are enough out there that you could I could set up a meeting and you could just ask questions if you're serious about it.
Well, we started out this process engaging with Dan Sullivan of Down East Broadband and Pioneer. So we started out with that because one of the things we heard repeatedly from the communities was that they liked the idea of owning the network, having control over the network, and having the open access. And that was why we had the idea of open access written as a component of the RFP, which of course our one response that was a response said that no, we really don't have anything to add on that. So Mike, you said this a while back, we're gonna probably end up in a boat where we need to pick the best of what we've got for options, and
Yep. We throw it up on a board, check the boxes, and that's all we can do.
personally, where Consolidated is more ubiquitous throughout the two towns than Spectrum, to me,
Mhm.
that would be the one that would make sense for me to go with. I know Spectrum would be building out what they've got, but that means that you'd have the sections that are already served by Spectrum on coax until they get to the point of overhauling that, which leads to some disparity, which I don't want to go to the people, and it wouldn't necessarily be me going to people, but saying, well, we're going to leave you folks where you are because you're pretty good right now, and we're going to bump everybody else up to fiber with Spectrum's help. I would rather it be
Fiber
clean,
everywhere.
same across the board.
Sure. So you're looking for, fiber across the board, fiber to the house. DOCSIS 4.0 would solve a lot of issues in terms of symmetrical speeds. But until then, is it going to be available 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? You don't
Right.
know.
It does sound like their timelines are similar for their respective improvements, but
Yeah, Roy, that was definitely my one takeaway and concern being a Spectrum customer now. The thought that it's 5 to 7 years before they would improve it to 5 gig. We're remote workers and
Yeah.
we're going to be the end of the line because we're good enough right now, but
Right.
we're trying to be good enough running 2 businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm,
Sandy, I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah.
If you're worried about service at 5 gigs for the type of work that unless you're like Northern Light, where you're sending MRIs and X-rays over the net, a gig is ample. All right. And for most businesses, a gig is overkill. Believe me, I sold this stuff. All right. Most businesses can get by on 300 meg. Now, the question becomes, too, and what people have to take in consideration is that, the speed test, it's really governed by where you are, what you have for computers. Yeah, that makes a big difference on it. If you have a desktop that's 10 years old, the CPU can't handle high speeds. It just physically can't. You don't have the iron to do that. So, I mean, it depends on your operating system. There's a lot of factors that come into play on that.
Yeah.
I mean, to utilize 100% bandwidth of a gig, okay, you're pushing tremendous amounts of data. You really are. And a lot of it is imaging. Even if you send music records or video, I mean, I doubt very much you're going to come even close to a gig of service. So, I mean, those are things to consider. I mean, just been there, done that. Yeah.
But I mean, that's why,
So-
we're targeting a gig now for everybody. We had it at
Sure.
100, but we're looking at a gig because gig looks very attainable on either one of these
Yes, it is.
platforms. So,
Oh, yeah, no, gig.
but
Gigabit
expandable in the
Ethernet.
future.
Oh, certainly. You know what? If it came to the point where we had a business that needed 10 gig, wow, I'd be ecstatic. I'd be taking my shovel. Let's break ground now. It's highly unlikely. Although with Steuben being that that satellite outfit there that they're looking to build, I can see a real need for that.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Especially
mean,
when you're handling
these are all good points, but 20 years ago, we thought that whatever it was with the dial-up modem was adequate. That was a generational change. And 20 years from now, hopefully, whatever we build 20 years from now is going to be our standard. And I can't predict what the data needs are going to be.
And
There'll be more than that.
20 years from now, I'll probably be dead. So, but the point is that the price will continue to come down per megabit. All right, it's going to come down to a point where it's going to get more reasonable. I can tell you unequivocally that 20 years ago, a T1, that's 1.544 megabits per second, cost on average of internet $2,000. $2,000, and you couldn't sell it fast enough. Now you look at a T1, they don't sell T1 speeds anymore. Okay, so it's really it's going to be another change, a paradigm change on how we do things.
Well, to chime in on that, I remember when Sumner got its T1. I was a student when Sumner got its T1. And I went to the university shortly thereafter, and the University of Maine at the time had dual OC3s. And that was amazing. And you know what happened right around that time?
Certainly.
Napster. Thank you, David.
Okay.
Napster happened, and we ran into the scenario where whatever speed you have, applications will arise to consume that speed. So,
well, sure.
And the proliferation of streaming service, I would say, is a symptom of that. The more bandwidth we have, the more things people will come up to use that bandwidth for. And so I think
universities is one thing, but really, Joe's General Store is not going to do that. They're not going to use it. I'm sorry.
No, they're going to use it for credit card processing and maybe camera systems and remote access camera systems and remote management and security and so forth. Yeah, it will be. I'm not saying that every person is going to use up that bandwidth. I'm just saying the more that it is available and ubiquitous, the more applications will develop to take advantage of it. And so what is sufficient for a household today, like you said, Mike, in 20 years, we'll look back and say, how did we ever make do with that? That's why I think, the fiber, because it's not limited based on the fiber that goes in, it's limited by the technology on either end, like was alluded. So.
Yep. Yeah. In 20 years, I'll be dead, but that's okay.
Or underwater.
But it could be. That's my real big concern is the proximity to the ocean with Consolidated's mini CO. For Winter Harbor.
I really
have a concern about that.
I really would have liked them to show a little bit more concern for a CO that was, within 50 feet of ocean water, twice within a 1 week span.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I agree with you.
Simon was very cool dealing with that prospect, I thought. But
it's what to do.
So I don't see
that. We're not relegated. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't see a clear winner out of today.
No.
I have my preference, and it pains me to say what the preference is, but we don't have to make any decisions today.
That's correct.
We can sit on it and we can have a discussion down the line. We don't have information on the next round of funding yet.
That's correct. That is correct. And you know what? We can always come up with more questions for them to answer. It's not relegated to just this call. So,
true.
We come up with more questions. Ask away. It never hurts to ask.
Right. Any other thoughts on this one? And if not, I'll go back to the beginning of the agenda.
Please do.
We can do that. Yep.
All right. Approval of the prior meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Everybody got a chance to review them?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
My wife read them to me.
Wonderful. Perfect.
Linda read them to me.
All right. Postcard was mailed. I have that on there. I didn't get a copy, but did you folks get a copy?
Not yet.
Not yet. When did you
No,
get yours,
no.
Sandy?
We got both of them, Goldsboro and Winter Harbor. Gosh, the middle of last week for Winter Harbor, and then I think it was it Monday for Goldsboro?
Interesting.
PO boxes. Both are PO boxes, if that makes a difference.
Okay. Mark, did you see a postcard?
I don't think so. I don't
All
check
right.
mail that much. I'll check.
Okay.
Well, yes, I did.
You
I
got
did,
yours,
I
Bob?
did get a postcard, boy. Yep.
Okay.
That would have come in that would have come in the recent week, is that right? I'll check.
Well, I hope you get one, Mike, but at least you're, if you don't, you're not missing out on the discussion.
I'll check again tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
was it sent out based on tax base or voter registration? Do you remember what
It,
the?
it should have been sent to every address in the zip code, bulk mailing.
Okay,
So, usually they'll just send it to the post office and it's bulk mailing permit.
South Goldsboro got one.
Okay.
I need to watch the mail closer.
All right, and that invoice has already been passed off to the town office for payment. Eve, it's not specifically written this way, but Eve did sign the contract extension, so we have until, I think it's May, whatever Kendra Joe said last time, to spend down the rest of the Connect or Get Ready Connect funds. And I did just review, we have the domain, the website we have the domain scoticbroadband.org for a total of 3 years, so 2 more years. We may have to, if we want to keep the website up, renew the hosting, and we may want to renew our Zoom as well. We have some other
Yes.
funds too, but I think we're in good shape for that for now. And
Sounds good.
so we've interviewed. Anybody give any thoughts yet to update for the town reports? It's okay. I can probably just update what we already have if anybody has any earth-shattering thoughts for me to include, let me know.
well, I think the only
Now,
other
do we
thing we
want to
talked.
set,
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm saying, do we want to set a date, a tentative date for vendor selection? I'll say second quarter 2024.
I think we should be pretty vague, given our questions about funding and grants at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say if we can, I don't know what to
That's
recommend on
saying
this.
that might be saying too much.
Well, why don't we do this? Let's see what David churns out back to us for notes. Obviously, we've had the discussion, and then when we see it in writing, maybe we can think about it a little bit more. And maybe at our next meeting, we can come up with a bit more of a timeline. We may also, there may be some news on the BEAD funding timeline.
Sure.
Never know. And then we can
That's good.
toss the idea around of a vendor selection date.
Yeah.
And if there are other questions that people want to ask, have them respond to in the interim, we could always come up with that list.
Certainly. Certainly.
Roy, I was just going to say additions to the town report would be just that we have updated and had these conversations with the providers. That's the new part of this going forward.
Right. Yeah. We definitely slip that in there.
I would also add, piggybacking on Bob's comment about possibly second quarter, keeping in mind that the town meetings will be in June. If we can kind of work back our time from now towards those town meetings. That'll be a key time to bring any updates.
Mhm.
Whether we do another in person, spending some of the grant funding before May to do one more community outreach potentially. That might be a good way to use some funding as well. Just suggestions.
Right. Yeah, and probably, well, I don't know. We should get an accounting of what we've got left in Get Ready Connect and the other piles. And that will certainly inform what we can do for an outreach. I don't know. I would have liked it to be more clear after meeting with these two personally.
Hmm.
All right.
Well,
Any other thoughts?
it's not, no, I'll make a motion to end the meeting.
Okay.
We should carry it, between now and the next meeting, think of questions that you want to ask. Put pen to paper.
Yep. And speaking of next meeting, I have that tentatively set for Wednesday, February 28th. Here
Yep.
on your family-friendly Zoom channel.
All right.
All
Same
right.
Zoom channel, same time. All
We
right.
have motion. Do we have a second to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank
Have a
you.
good night, Tay.
Thank
Have a good night.
Good night.
There we go.
You too. Bye-bye.